Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Price. I am, as Mr. Hinchman said, I am a third-year student at Thurgood Marshall School of Law. We'll be graduating in about 3 weeks. Um, and I'm also the president of the Civil Rights Law Society at the law school. The panelists to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Baltasar Salazar. I'm originally from Brownsville, Texas. I served in the United States Army for 5 years. I was an infantryman. I did two combat tours to Iraq, both during the surge, and we're actually the last combat unit in Iraq. In total, I have 27 months of combat experience. I was there for a total of 27 months. After I finished serving, I went back home to Brownsville. I finished my undergraduate, and now I'm here at Thurgood Marshall in my 1L year.
Good afternoon. My name is Layman Woolburn. Back home. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force. I was a captain. I served in multiple locations from South Korea, Southeast Asia, Germany, and last in Afghanistan. I served 8 years, 2 months, 28 days. My last tour was in Afghanistan, the Parwan province, which I returned from in February of last year. And I ran to go to law school here. And now I'm a 1L at Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
Well, my name is Andrew Christopher Atchison. I am a third-year law student. I was in the Army National Guard for almost 3 years. I am just ready to graduate.
As Mr. Hinchman said, what we wanted to try to do with this student panel is the overall theme of the symposium is to take a look at America's involvement in war and America's war policy and how that affects the country. So with the student panel, we want to try to narrow that focus a little bit to look at, to discuss how America's war policy affects us as students. And so I'm going to start with the general question to the panelists and have them give their response. What is your view of America's war policy, America's continuous involvement in war, and how do you think that affects us as students? Mr. Salazar, start with you.
Okay, our involvement in the Middle East, I believe, there's mixed reviews as to why are we there, why we're still there, what's going on. So I'm gonna give you my perspective. I know when during my second tour, that's when they announced that that President Obama wanted to get troops out of Iraq, and he gave a timetable, and some of us got together and we agreed that although his intentions were right, and most of us, especially during combat, we go through periods where we're down, we feel good, we're going home. So when we heard that his plan was to get everybody out of there by a certain time period, and not leaving a residual unit or troops to to help maintain what everything that we had already done till then, we knew, and most of the Iraqis, I was an infantryman, I've dealt with people on a daily basis, they kind of knew this was going to happen. They kind of knew eventually there'd be a collapse, and it was, in a way, it was kind of sad because we all knew that was going to happen, and I just, as far as our involvement, I believe, we shouldn't be fighting, of course, but I think we should have at least, done something more to assist the Iraqi army, the Iraqi police, and at least left a residual unit out there and to help them, maintain their country, because as you know, right now it's in collapse, and unfortunately, we have some of it is our fault, but hope that answers your question.
Salim.
I'm going to caveat my comments. Colonel Wilkerson spoke earlier about those officers that are loyal to the system. I may fall in that category, so please excuse me if I am. But I would say that our involvement in prolonged efforts overseas and on several levels and in different environments, I think it has a very strained consequence on our environment here as students, but I think on the American people as a whole, because when soldiers and airmen and sailors and Marines are going forth, they're leaving behind families, and those families are supporting them, and they're at war as well. And then as students, and especially as law students, we're going into the profession of law to try to effectuate change amongst legislation to stop those things or to further them. But nonetheless, it has a strained effect on what's going on here at home, I say as a whole, across America at large.
Well, personally, I feel as though there's an apathy. Like, it's about students and young people. A lot of young people honestly don't care about foreign policy because it's foreign policy and we don't actually see it firsthand. We don't actually have the interactions with what's going on. Like, you guys deployed. Most people that are our age have no idea what that is and what's actually going on overseas or even south of the border or Canada. They don't understand, and they don't honestly care because it doesn't affect them personally, like in an instant. Like, it will affect us down the line, but right now, I'm not going to actually see the consequences of the actions that are being taken in Congress right now. So, like, there is an apathy, and like a lot of young people don't care.
So then, to that point, what do you think is the solution to curing that apathy, if there is such a thing as a cure for apathy?
Sorry. I believe the cure for that is, of course, we know that war is going to continue. You know, our goal is to at least, you know, for the meantime, is to suppress ISIS and their forces. So I believe in order to cure the apathy, I mean, I think if students or the public in general start seeing a lot of improvements, maybe, you know, better spending, you know, I know we see all these drones killing innocent people. A lot of everybody's thinking, why are we still there? So if we start seeing improvements, I believe that would help cure the apathy.
Okay. Mr. Salazar, you mentioned just now that we know that war is going to continue. That being the case, then we've all heard America referred to as the world's police. So to that point, do you agree with that perspective that America is the world's police, and should we be that if you think we are?
I do believe we're the world's police, and, you know, we kind of put ourselves there. Can we blame our government? Maybe, but also, you know, we try to help all these countries in need, and although we have our problems in our country, you know, my perspective is I believe we should get involved get involved, but, you know, if the country like Iraq did, you know, they wanted to run their own country, they were tired of us being there. That was most of the perspective from them. If the country doesn't need us there, or if, you know, we could get other people, or other countries to get involved as well, or if other, you know, for example, in the Middle East, if we could get more involvement, I believe we don't have to be the police anymore, you know, but we also need help. And
I'd say to whom much is given, much is expected of. Our country has been very blessed throughout its history, and I've had the privilege to live in other places that aren't so privileged as our country. So not to say that we need to police everyone through militarized force, because there's several ways to skin a cat. So, but I would absolutely say that when it comes to policing, so to speak, or helping people around the world, we need to do that, but we need to do that through change, and that change starts from the top down. In every organization, when there's a problem, a systematic problem, you have to start from the top down. I see an issue being the leadership. A lot of the leadership in our country hasn't served, so they don't understand the tolls that war takes on military members and veterans, and their families, most importantly, the families. So I think that's a start in the right direction for efficating that change and getting the understanding and the knowledge out there for people to understand why we're doing what we're doing across the world, but to do it in a more sensible fashion, in a more peaceful way.
See, I think you pretty much not. You said it. That more knowledge needs to be actually given out. A lot of people don't know. Like, if you don't know, how can you move forward? And that is one of the pieces that we actually probably should work on.
But are there limits to that, though? I mean, I understand your point that too much is given, much is required, and yeah, we have been blessed as a country, and so we have, I guess, to some degree, some responsibility, maybe even an obligation to give back. But are there limits to that? Either panelist, doesn't matter.
That's based on a personal basis. Like, you're saying, we are very fortunate. We have, I think Colonel Wilkerson said it earlier, that about 0.01% of this country runs the world. Like, we are the richest country in the world. Like, it's proven, and we honestly don't realize how fortunate we are, just because we haven't actually been out. Like definitely forgot your last name.
Wilburn.
Mr. Wilburn. Sorry. Mr. Wilburn was going on about how the families are affected. Those are the people that actually know. Like, they have the experience. And my personal beliefs are, if I actually can help, I would. If you want to do more, you would. We have more, and we can keep giving, so I don't think there's a limit. Like, if you want to keep giving, you can. You'll give all until it's spent. And even still, if you want to do more, you'll find more to give.
Okay, all right.
I think that makes sense.
Our time is running short, but I do want to address an issue. I want to bring it a little closer to home. We took some Mr. Colonel Wilkerson talked about. He mentioned some vets some African American vets that he knows, he's spoken with, and asked about them going to fight, but then coming back to a country that doesn't really afford them those rights and opportunities that they're fighting for. A question was posed to me by Professor Clevin, the advisor of our organization, in terms of African Americans, and he asked, "Are African Americans patriotic?" And I've heard this question before myself. I've had these discussions. And so I want to pose that question to the panelists. Do you believe that we are at a historically black college. So do you believe that African Americans are patriotic?
Absolutely. I've served with many African Americans, Pacific Islanders. And, it doesn't, once you're out there, fighting the war, the skin color doesn't matter. You could be black, pink, white, it doesn't matter. We're out there doing fighting for our country and, for the good of everyone. So, but even if you take that statement, and apply it to with recent history, like half a century ago, African Americans were not as revered as they are now. And as recent events, as far as police brutality and all that, in a way, some of them have a reason for not being patriotic. They're out there, serving their country or helping the country, and this is still going on. It's unbelievable, and it's. We've moved away from that, and it's unfortunate that some of those events still occur today. So, answering your question is, I believe everybody is patriotic, whether they're black or not. But in the sense of African Americans, I believe they have a right to be unpatriotic, given these events.
I don't really think of it as a not being patriotic, because me personally, I am patriotic, but I also want equal rights. I love the country. I love the U.S. I love that I was born here, and I consider myself very fortunate. But at the same time, I know that I'm viewed differently because of my skin color. And that is unfortunate, but it's a fact. I am viewed differently. If I didn't dress like I do, I would be looked at as though I could possibly be a criminal. It doesn't change the fact that I love where I am. I love the U.S. I think that it affords me a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't if I wasn't here.
The question about African Americans and being patriotic, that's an answer that goes without saying. Looking at the panel here, people of color in general are patriotic, but to go further beyond that, Americans as a whole are patriotic. I think all Americans have innate characteristics within them to be loving of not only their city, their state, but of their country. If you ask any American, you get them in a closed room behind closed doors, regardless of what their situation and their position is in life, they're going to say that they love their country. Everywhere I've been in the world, everyone that's from this country, regardless of where they came from, they love the United States of America. But I'm not going to promulgate this conflict because I think it's a ruse to distract us from the larger issue, and the larger issue is war and conflict. And I don't have the answer to those things, but it doesn't need to happen. The conflict needs to stop, and the war needs to stop. So I think that's more the direction we need to go in.
I want to thank the panelists. This, as Mr. Hinson pointed out, this panel of panelists was pulled together at the last minute. We had a prior panel that was supposed to be here, but conflict arose and they were not able to be here. So in the last couple of days, I pulled these gentlemen together, and I want to thank them for coming and speaking. Also, I know my time is gone. I also want to thank the Houston Peace and Justice Center for allowing us, the Civil Rights Law Society, to co-sponsor this with us, with them rather. And also want to recognize my professor, Professor Clevin, who's the advisor of our organization, and thank him for all he did to help us bring this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and the Law Society, Civil Rights Law Society. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being willing to come on short notice and share your views. And it's very helpful to us to exchange ideas and to hear where people are coming from and to actually hear underneath the differences that we're all trying to get to a world without the conflict and the war for everybody's sake. We're right. I'm hearing signals there, but our schedule is pretty much on schedule. We're going to go to lunch, and I want to advise you we have 45 minutes, and we'll try to get everybody back in so the day will work out right. And we have a couple of things to make sure you're aware of. Besides the book sales, Brazos Books, David Swanson, Chalmers Johnson table, which we hope you'll go to, the artworks have been provided.